We get two types of VAT registration in South Africa. We get compulsory registration, where a person is required or obliged to register as a VAT vendor, and then we get voluntary registration, where the person can choose to register as a VAT vendor. The focus of this recording is going to be on voluntary VAT registration. So for voluntary registration, there are 4 instances where a person can voluntarily register for VAT. We're going to firstly look at past supplies, and this means we are similar to what we did with compulsory registration. We're looking backwards, the previous 12 months. So at the end of the month during which the total value of taxable supplies for the preceding 12 months exceed 50,000 Rand. Then our second instance is when we look to the future, so we're looking 12 months ahead. If the total value of taxable supplies has not yet exceeded 50,000, but it can reasonably be expected to exceed 50,000 Rand within 12 months from the date of registration as a vendor. And to determine whether it can reasonably be expected that the total value of taxable supplies will exceed 50,000, there's some objective tests that we can use. The first one is you look at the previous 2 months' taxable supplies should be at least 4,200 Rand per month, because if you take that 4,200, you multiply it by 12, you get to 50,400, which is greater than 50,000 Rand. So, looking at your previous 2 months, for those months, did you on average have more than 4,200 Rand per month? But what is also a relatively good indicator of it can reasonably be expected to exceed 50,000 is if you've got a written contract that is going to give you total taxable supplies of more than 50,000 Rand. Important to remember is that where the value of taxable supplies has not yet exceeded 50,000, so specifically in relation to future supplies, the person shall be registered on the payments basis until the value of the taxable supplies exceed 50,000. And this, of course, is the only instance where a company will be registered on the payments basis. As soon as the value of the taxable supplies exceed 50,000, the company will be converted back to the invoice basis. And remember, invoice versus payment basis, this refers to your accounting basis for VAT. Another exception here is for persons supplying commercial accommodation, so hotels, vacation rentals, Airbnbs, bed and breakfasts, etc. They may only voluntarily register for VAT if the total value of their taxable supplies does not exceed 50,000. Oh no, their taxable supplies for voluntary registration needs to exceed 120,000 Rand. The third instance where a person can voluntarily register for VAT is if they practice certain activities continuously and it is regularly carried on. Now, these activities are listed in a regulation by the Minister of Finance, and the nature of these activities, and this is why there's no amount attached to them, the nature of these activities are that it is likely to only start making taxable supplies after a period of time. In other words, for persons in these types of industries, they are not going to immediately show taxable supplies. It usually takes a while. And if you take a look at the examples, the planting, maintaining and harvesting of tree plantations in the agricultural sector, the manufacturing of motor vehicles in the manufacturing sector, construction of residential commercial buildings, all of these things take time before they are actually going to start showing turnover or profit. Okay, and then certain specific entities. This is the fourth instance where a person can voluntarily register for VAT: qualifying welfare organizations or municipalities. These also do not have a specific monetary threshold attached to them, which means qualifying welfare organizations, irrespective of their level of taxable supplies, can apply to register voluntarily for VAT. The decision to voluntarily register for VAT is not something that a person should take lightly, because there are certain advantages and disadvantages to registering for VAT versus not registering for VAT. Can you think of some of the advantages versus disadvantages of doing a voluntary VAT registration?